Is this when I do the jerk like I just came back into frame?
Something like that.
See how you do this? You can.
Like, and now we're back.
Yeah.
So we were just talking about reviews, good reviews, bad reviews. I'm a fan of all reviews that aren't, like you said, malicious or with
Right.
ill intention.
The thing is, if it affects you, good or bad, if it affects you, the artist.
That's what I agree, which is where when I get a bad review or a good review, or when I see them of my colleagues' films, a lot of the time, so long as the writer is writing from a point of passion, like that they love what they do, they're giving the film an honest shake. If they liked it or they didn't like it, I think it has value. And the other thing, especially about genre, which I do think this would be very different if I was a fan of comedic or dramatic films. But in horror, sometimes a bad review for me makes me want to watch it more. One of my movies, Run Like Hell, which I acted, I didn't direct it. The reviewer, somebody on Amazon, wrote that they were looking for a fun movie. They didn't get a glimmer. Their dog could have directed a better movie, and they don't have a dog. And for me, I was like, if I wasn't already aware of this movie, that would make me want to see it personally.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, it's so bad. Like, I love that. Or like there's a filmmaker, Neil Breen, and some of the stuff, don't go. You want to talk about rabbit holes? Go down the Neil Breen rabbit hole on YouTube. Oh my gosh, it's like he could be the new Tommy Wiseau. It's so much fun, and he does these genre films. So for me, sometimes a bad review has the opposite effect as just a lover of film.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like if you look on, ironically, Amazon, where Truth or Dare is free, it's on Prime. You're going to see a lot of people that loved it from seeking it out and finding it when they had to pay for it. And then you're going to see people that decided to watch it, some of whom thought it was a Morte movie, because obviously the Blumhouse version, watched it because it was free on Prime, and were like, what the hell is this? How dare you do this? And they're like really angry. But again, I look at those reviews, I'm like, I'd want to watch that now. Like, if
I read reviews where people go, this thing should be censored. This should never be allowed to be whatever. Guess what? It worked.
Yeah. You're like, now I want to see that. Now I want to see more of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so hold on.
And the bing bong you're hearing occasionally is the store bing bong from customers coming and going and stuff. So you are looking at us in a working store. This is not a set.
No. And if you happen to be in Burbank, you can come by and check it out. His hours are posted on Yelp as well as his website and everywhere else.
And if you want to build a set that looks just like this, you can.
Yeah. Totally possible. Now, something else that I am so madly in love with you and your store for doing, which is helping to give indie artists in the horror world an actual place to do signings. So let's talk about it. Like, how did that come up? It's such a brilliant idea. And for those of you who don't know, like, you just schedule with Dell, and he's such a supporter. He allows us to come in and bring whomever we can get from the movie, sign, promote. He doesn't overcharge on the Blu-rays and DVDs or posters.
SRP, and sometimes I think that's overcharging, but yeah.
Right, and also for the record, you can, if you're ever not able to attend one in person, you can reach out to Dell, and you can say, hey, look, I want that signed piece.
Yep, and I want that telephone.
Yeah. So much fun. So the merch from the signings fans can order, even if they can't get here.
Right.
And what I love about that is, again, you just pay the MSRP, the actual price plus shipping. So if there's 5 of your favorite people here signing it, you're not paying for those signatures. You're just literally paying for the item, which is so great. But how did you get into doing that? Because it's such a kind, wonderful thing for you to do for the horror community.
Well, that came out of book signings, not my book signings. My wife and I used to go to, it's a bookstore that's no longer there out off of Ventura. It was named after Harlan Ellison, but it was a sci-fi horror book, and they would have book signings. And I had never been to book signings before, and I went there, and you got to meet the author, and sometimes friends of the author would show up to support the author, and it would be another author, and it was so cool that when we decided to do a store, I said that's something we're going to have to keep, just because. So it wasn't my original idea, but it was. I thought it was a cool idea then. And then, as you've seen here, like you might be doing a signing of a DVD. And some of your friends will come in to support you, and it'll be like, oh my gosh, do you know who that is over there? And it's a community thing. You keep using the word community, and the point is that there's no pressure. It's not like you're at a convention where there's a rush of people coming at you. People didn't have to pay any money to get in. Yes, they have to buy the item, but then they get it signed for free. And most of the times they can bring other items, and the people may charge for the other items, but it's still a lot less for them in that case than paying admission at a convention and paying for parking.
Oh, completely. And
You
I
know.
also love that so many filmmakers now, because you're such a staple of the community, will get limited edition posters, or they'll get little extras so that people who come here in person get another item bonus for free typically. At least, not to say that somebody couldn't choose to charge for these posters. I haven't seen it charged. You come in, you pay for the DVD or Blu-ray, you get it signed for free, and you get a free signed poster, which I just think is the coolest thing ever as a genre fan.
And they love people bringing in things to them. To be
Oh.
said, I'll hear stuff all the time from the table like, "Where did you find this? Oh, I haven't seen that in 400 years." You know, I mean, just odd things pop up from the real collectors. And the nice thing for your side of the table, the talent side of the table, is that it's an hour or two out of your day and you get to sleep in your own bed that night.
And it's a wonderful, safe, cozy environment that you don't have to like go out of your way. Like I don't have to catch a flight. I don't have to,
Right.
there's a lot more hoops to jump through when you're talking a convention appearance.
You're not sleeping, in a strange hotel with nobody you know.
Nope, or hoping somebody picks me up at the airport in time.
Yeah. I mean, those are good too because
Yeah.
the entire country can't come here.
No.
But so the rise of horror conventions is a very big part of your earlier question about how the industry has changed.
True.
Horror conventions 15 years ago were like what?
Almost non-existent.
Almost non-existent, and then it was like they blew up. They just exploded. And you have people like appearance agents who I don't know if they were in the business 20 years ago because you guys weren't out doing appearances.
Yeah.
But there are so many horror conventions and stuff. They have to take care of the logistics. They have to make sure you have a flight and you have a room and you're not doing it the same weekend that you're doing this. I mean, it's actually a fairly important job, too.
Oh, it completely is.
Yeah.
Especially getting a good one versus a bad one.
Yeah.
And one that can like hold them to their contracts, especially the first and second year.
Yeah, because they have to be the bad guy for you, and that's the whole point. And if they're good at it, like any agent, my literary agent has to be the bad guy for me against the publisher. And then in the end, then me and the publisher are still friends. You and the hotel and the convention are still friends. They're the bad guy, but they hire him again because they have the client.
They also don't usually typically see them face to face. So that's like the other benefit is usually the agent isn't the one going to the convention with the person. There's a few super high profile ones who travel with the high profile clients, but with that omission, they kind of get to be the meanie holding them accountable to the contracts behind a laptop. Or
Right. So like a lot of times, if anyone goes, it's a worker bee that goes with you to make sure you're all checked in. And
exactly.
Yeah.
So you hit on
life is good.
some days. So you hit on the fact that you are a writer and that you are very actively involved in that world. Let's talk a little bit about that. What is it that got you into writing books? What is it that you love about writing books? And are you still writing them as much today as you did when you started?
No, I'm writing probably now more than ever, which isn't to say I'm a nonstop writer because I do run a store with my wife too. I've had my first short story published in a regular book was published by a man named Jeff Gelb, who published a whole series of books called Hot Blood, and it was erotic horror story series.
Oh, wow.
And I was in like Hot Blood 11 or 12, and I had a short story in that then was bought by Mick Garris and Lionsgate and whoever else for a telephone call. I have been writing for a long time. Like I said, the first thing was published by Jeff Gelb. Mick Garris or whoever else was in that company, they did Masters of Horror. And then after 2 seasons of Masters of Horror on Showtime or HBO, then it went to NBC and changed its name to Fear Itself. And I know Lionsgate was the big boys in that one. And Mick bought my short story that was published in the Jeff Gelb book, and it became the premiere episode of Fear Itself, which was an anthology series. Every week was a different story. And right when he bought it and he did his first scripting of it, the big writer's strike went down a decade ago or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So he was also a producer besides being a writer. So he couldn't cross that line to do any of the rewrites. So it went up to Canada, got rewritten about 3 times, and eventually it came out as the first story in Fear Itself, which now I think you can see from, if you buy the DVD or whatever. And it was, I was happy with it. It wasn't exactly the story, but they kept the characters' names.
Well, there you go.
There you
Sometimes that's all you can hope for.
So
like,
my wife said to me, why do they buy a story if they're going to change everything? Like mine was a Western and this one was modern day. They had a vampire running around in this place where these women lived, and mine didn't have a vampire in it. You know, minor little changes. And
like the entire plot.
Yeah, but they kept the character names. So they were Old West names like Lemon and this guy and that, you know. So my wife said, why do they buy a story if they're not going to do it? And I said, the check cash. That's it.
As somebody who used to work in corporate America, I think a lot of the time it's just because people are so short-sighted. They're so on top of like doing what's best in the moment now that they kind of don't often like to think outside of their little box.
Right.
And companies often, in my experience, are so focused on like keeping this department in this budgetary line and this department in this budgetary line. So it's like they'll focus on this today, not realizing that, well, if they acquire this as it is and it needs all these rewrites over here and over here, that's going to increase all of the costs. But they're focused on their little world. We're like, it doesn't matter. That's not hitting our bottom line.
Well, you know, and the other thing, and that's part of the big change of the last 20 years too, is that it is cheaper to buy the story and not worry about litigation because your story might be close than it is to go with your lawyers and do, well, just buy the story and you own it. So my short story originally to be published in the Hot Blood series was like a couple $100. Then when it was bought and made into the thing, it was like after the agent got their stuff, like $10,000 for doing nothing. I'd already written this story. And I think this society has become so litigious that maybe part of it is the fact that they don't want to face a lawsuit if you're close. I got a call about 9 months later from the lawyers at Lionsgate. And she goes, I just want to tell you, somebody said that the story was taken from them, blah, blah, blah. And I just want to get some facts from you before we have to take anything further. When was your story first published? And I told them and all of this stuff. And she said, okay, thanks. You probably will not be hearing from me again because I told the guy that being in a vehicle and breaking down in front of an old haunted place is not an original idea. And I said, thank you, I think. And I never did hear from them again. But people will sue you at the drop of a hat. They
will. Or they're also, I find, very eager today, given the fact that they can hide behind a keyboard, quick to be like, oh, that's my idea. It's been stolen from me. There was like several movies or TV shows where I'll be in a meeting and somebody will actually be like, oh yeah, that was stolen from me. And that's usually a sign that you're in a meeting with somebody who's a little bit questionable because first of all, if something is really stolen for the record, people aren't publicly talking about it. They have their lawyers and it's being handled professionally in a way that's going to generate them money. If it actually is real. If they're talking about it publicly, either online or in person, almost always, in my experience, it's because the person's full of crap and in their mind they believe it to be true on some level, but
they may not be lying to you. They may honestly believe it.
But like the reality of the matter is there's not really many original ideas.
So when somebody's doing that, it's like in a first meeting talking about something else, it's kind of a red flag.
Oh, completely red flag. That's when you're like, find a polite reason to get up and leave. Now, Thank
you for the meeting. Yeah.
Are you still writing scripts, or are you focusing more on?
No, I have just gotten into writing scripts the last couple of years. I've always written prose, short stories, nonfiction books. I've edited a couple of books that we won the Bram Stoker Award for. We're nominated for the Shirley Jackson Award, Black Quill Award. A lot of that kind of stuff, but I never wrote a novel before, so over the past couple of years I wrote a Western told in first person from the female point of view, and that comes out in July of 2019. I said 2019, so we don't know when you're watching this. Yes. I couldn't say it comes out in a couple of months.
Right, because you never know.
You never know. We should be playing this forever. So that's a new thing for me. And in the meantime, I've been constantly writing short stories and being in other people's anthologies.